Sheikha, you left us, we were in prayer in Afghanistan on the Orient Express. Where are you? Where are you and how are you heading?
I was heading to India, and I was seeking the Guru of Ramdas at that moment in my journey, because the words that he had spoken were the same as the words I had written in my journal. And I was searching for someone who could guide me to understand where these words came from and where
I just want to grab
where
you.
they're leading.
You're in a journey. You're in Afghanistan. You're hearing the call to prayer, the Islamic call to prayer. You see the people prostrating, but you're not on your way as a journey looking for that. You're looking for the Maharaji in India.
Apparently.
And do you find him?
I traveled for several months on trains searching for my guide, but wherever I went to look for him, he wasn't there. And then someone told me, well, maybe he's in another place. And so I kept traveling like that. I eventually went to Nepal. Coming back to India, I met Lama Kalu Rinpoche, a wonderful, great Tibetan Lama. And finally, I ended up in a place called Nainital, where I fell down in a field in the Himalayas, and eventually was awakened by someone who was connected to Neem Karoli Baba and came to find me. I had a bad case of hepatitis by that time, and he made food for me on a campfire. I was revived, and I was eventually brought to the Guru.
To the one you were seeking.
Apparently. I wasn't really seeking him, but he was a person on the way that I needed to meet. And after a deep encounter that we had, a deep meeting, he actually told me to continue the journey, not to stay there. And he said...
And seeking...
He said, follow the path of love. He said, we are united, so you go on. Follow the path of love and walk in the footsteps of Jesus. Peace and blessings be upon him and all the messengers.
So the Maharaji, you've passed through Islam, you meet the Maharaji, and he sends you to go look for Jesus.
And to walk.
And to walk.
In the way that Jesus walked.
So this journey. So where do you go next?
I ended up in monasteries, not planning to, in Europe. And I spent a very deep time there, mostly in solitude, but I met people who were apparently waiting for me, great Mother Superior, and she said, Jesus...
Which countries are they?
This was in Belgium.
Belgium?
On my way back to America, I ended up living and, following, understanding, learning, let's say learning about the stage of development and the nature of prayer more deeply, but not all the way yet.
So you had the rosary then too, huh?
Yes, I did. I had a Russian Orthodox rosary. And so I lived there for about a year. At a certain moment, the message came to me and it said, you can't stay here. Continue the journey. Totally internally. Now, where that led me ultimately, I went back to America, but soon after, I ended up in Jerusalem. And in fact, I met my Mother Superior in Jerusalem when I arrived.
Amazing.
And I went through a kind of week-long seminar on the Mount of Olives, where her priest was speaking about Revelation and the book of Revelation. And then I had gone there with Sheikh Nuruddin Durki and Noura Durki, Haja Noura Durki, and we were writing a book on Jerusalem. And that was the next phase.
What year is this about?
1974.
Okay. I was graduating from high school. And you were doing this fantastic. What happens to you in that
I was guided very soon after. I was sitting at Damascus Gate waiting for Sir Marie, and a young man came to me and said, I was meditating, he kind of called me out and said, aren't you Mary from California? I said, yes, I'm Mariam. And he said, my grandfather's waiting for you. And in 1 week, we went to El Khalil, otherwise known as Hebron. We went to the tomb of the prophet Abraham. I entered the mosque or synagogue, church, and immediately fell prostrate. The power was so deep, and it was the only thing to do.
You
I
know,
didn't
in the
even
book-
remember that I saw that happening in the desert, but I had to do it.
But in the book of Nehemiah, which is the Old Testament, says that Ezra raised hands to the Lord, bowed, and prostrated,
That's right.
fell in prostration. So
That's the truth.
So this thing is guiding you to
Prostrate, absolutely.
prostrate.
Absolutely.
And your experience there, because I think this is a turning point for you
Yes.
in a place where Christianity, Islam, and Judaism now are the focus, not the Eastern tradition. What happens
And
to you?
I was born Jewish, having embraced Christianity, and I came to my true state of understanding who I really was in the tomb, and I call it Mazar, we all call it Mazar, a place of presence of the great patriarch Abraham, peace and blessings be upon him. And so it was there about 5 minutes away from the tomb that we went through the ancient walkways to the Zawiya of my first sheikh. And his name was Sheikh Abdul Muttalib, radiallahu anhu. And when I met him, he had this atmosphere of holiness, and not only atmosphere, he was in that state.
Right.
And he was, they say he was 135, he was ancient. And he knew who I was. He was waiting there. And so he gave me his bed to sleep on. He never slept. And I was sleeping there, and I had this very deep dream. I don't think I have time to tell you about it, but in the dream I did a 40-day retreat for peace in a high mountain kingdom. Now this was Jerusalem, where peace is so needed, the place of peace, which needs peace. In the dream, I was told that while I was in the retreat, a man came to the door. I didn't see him, and roses were put into the door every day, every 40 days.
Of this vision that you're having.
And finally, the man came to the door, and he said, "I'm a messenger of the king. The king is asking for your hand in marriage. And in order to make this marriage, you have to jump off a cliff." And I accepted that very normally.
Right.
This wasn't shocking to me. I said, "Yes, I do."
Because
I must.
your whole journey has basically been to
Surrender.
To surrender.
Surrender.
To let go.
Let go.
Fi sabilillah.
Fi sabilillah, in the way of God. Give my life back to whatever He guides me, in the way that He guides me. So I told this to the ancient sheikh, and he said, "This is a sign from Allah." He said, the messenger came from the messenger. The king is Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's asking you to join, to unite, and in order to do that, you have to surrender completely, jump off a cliff, and bow down. And so I became a Muslim.